You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. Let's turn to Front Page, where I sit down with another journalist to talk about the biggest news developing right now and how it affects the Pacific Northwest. And it is primary election season in Washington state. Politics is in the air, along with wildfire smoke, unfortunately. Joining me today is KUOW's Olympia reporter, Sarah Mizes Tan. Sarah, welcome. Thank you so much for being on Soundside.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been ramping up my air filter and all my systems for what is supposed to be a pretty hot week in Western Washington, and also potentially seeing some of that smoke coming down from BC. So I hope you have a good system there in Olympia, too.
Oof, yeah. We've got the air filters running and some AC units.
Okay. So we are prepped here on Soundside and at the Olympia Bureau, and we're going to turn to our top story on Front Page.
The states that choose not to participate with the SAVE program and they choose not to participate in securing the elections, we will make sure that we make those states a priority to look at who voted in their states and hold then the election officials accountable.
That is Department of Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin speaking to reporters on Friday. There have been a bunch of developments related to voting in recent days. And I think having you on, Sarah, gives us a chance to kind of catch up on what's been happening in the voting space and translate what this could mean for Washington state. So Markwayne Mullin is referring to these efforts by the Trump administration to get states to revamp the security of voting machines, turn over detailed voter rolls, and check them against a database used to prevent undocumented immigrants from getting government jobs and benefits. And to prove the urgency of those demands, Mullin presented a claim that his office has found 250,000 non-citizens were registered to vote in a handful of states: Pennsylvania, California, Nevada, and New Jersey. Now, I should say that the secretaries of states from those individual states immediately pushed back. There is reporting that that likely includes a lot of actual citizens that were flagged incorrectly. The Nevada Secretary of State said that the numbers are wildly speculative, and the DHS has not shared anything that backs it up. Republican Secretary of State from Pennsylvania said all evidence has shown that non-citizen voting is extremely rare across the country, including in Pennsylvania. But, you know, of course, this is coming in the wake of President Trump's primetime address to the nation, where he revived some of his debunked claims about the 2020 presidential election. You know, he talked about the threat of non-citizen voting and influence and interference by foreign governments. I mean, for you, Sarah, what do you take from this Markwayne Mullin statement on Friday? Like, is there a chance that Washington's Secretary of State might face criminal charges here if they continue to refuse to turn over these detailed voting records?
Yeah. You know, I think that mostly from what I've heard from the Washington Secretary of State's office, it seems like it's a lot of hot air and a little bit of trying to mislead voters and maybe intimidate voters a little bit. It does seem like the Secretary of State's office is going to stand strong on this. They have released a statement in response to the Trump administration's claims over non-citizen voting and all of that. They've said Washington state has a proven track record of running secure, accurate, and transparent elections. They say the Trump administration is telling the same lies over and over again, and that does not make them true. So it does seem, I mean, I can't say if the Trump administration is going to proceed with any criminal charges against the Secretary of State's office, but I do think for the time being, Washington state voting and mail-in ballot voting will remain as it is right now. And I think maybe that's like the biggest threat to elections at this point, is that people are just maybe feeling confused at this point about, okay, if I haven't gotten my mail-in ballot yet, will I get my mail-in ballot? Is it okay to send it in before Election Day? Will it be counted? Things like that. And the answer is yes. For the time being, everything will stay the same.
Yeah, and trust in elections is a huge part of this, right? I mean, we've seen this kind of playbook before where there's the seeding of the ground of, well, if there are security issues with this election and there are, you know, potentially non-citizens voting, then either there's going to be some kind of effort ahead of the election to alter how the elections are conducted, or afterwards, there's just going to be a continued campaign of undermining the faith in the validity of that election. And I mean, this takes us back to what happened in 2020 and 2021 and the years afterwards. So I think it's important to keep tabs on this kind of program. I also think it's important to kind of like go parse through some of these different things that the Trump administration has been trying to do. So that's one of them, this idea that they want the voter rolls turned over. They want voting machines revamped. And, if that doesn't happen, then the secretaries of state could face some kind of repercussions. Another one related to these voting rolls is a court case that's going on, and it has to do with the U.S. Postal Service. Now, the Postmaster General said last month that the agency would not deliver mail-in ballots in states that refuse to turn over information about people who use mail-in ballots, barcodes associated with those ballots. So this was a big, hubbub, and, members of Congress and others were like, what do you mean you're not going to deliver ballots? This was challenged in court and initially blocked. But then on Friday, Sarah, there was a D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals ruling that basically granted the Postal Service's right to move forward with this order, to finalize it, while the court case is going on, while the challenge is continuing. So now USPS is going to be able to finalize its rules. But the case, that doesn't mean that the case is not going to be successful ultimately in challenging it. We have to wait and see. But I mean, we're talking about an all mail-in state like Washington, this could potentially have a huge impact, right?
Totally. Yeah, I know. I think that this could mean, I think it's hard to say like how far this could go. Like, does this mean that voters are going to have to get some sort of pre-approval if you want to participate in mail-in ballot voting, and the default is just going to be in-person voting? I do know that from the SAVE Act, they say that if you do submit a mail-in ballot, if this were to pass, you would have to, with your ballot, also submit some sort of photocopied proof of ID or something like that. So certainly it seems like they're looking to raise the bar for mail-in ballot voting. And yeah, I think it's really kind of up in the air, and if this does go through, in terms of how mail-in ballot voting would shift, which is, for Washington, a huge shift, just because that's how the majority of the state votes.
This is also a different case from the U.S. Department of Justice lawsuit against Washington, where DOJ is trying to access the state's voters list and, the last four digits of Social Security numbers, personal information, things like that. There have been a bunch of other suits in other states that have been tossed, but this Washington case is still going on. There's a hearing for it in August. You mentioned the SAVE Act. So this is this big piece of legislation that the president has really been focused on, but the Congress, which is controlled by Republicans, has really not had an appetite for it. They even, refused to go back and pass the SAVE Act in order to get the president's signature on a big piece of housing legislation that just became law last week. And it would require what, Sarah? I'm forgetting now with the SAVE Act. It's like ID, proof of citizenship to register, right? Anything else?
Yes.
What else is involved there?
Oh, man, yes. There are a couple things here. Documentary proof of citizenship is going to be required when you're registering to vote in federal elections. Voters would need to show photo ID when actually voting in person. So in vote-by-mail states like Washington, you're going to have to include that copy of your photo ID when you return your ballot. And states would be required to submit a complete voter roll to the Department of Homeland Security. DHS would use these voter rolls to attempt to verify voter citizenship. And I think that's partially where states like Washington have gotten caught up, just because they don't want to do that. A lot of concerns over voter privacy with this sort of thing.
Again, we hear from voting experts all the time. There are multiple layers of verification for these ballots. Most ballots end up as paper. They're auditable. There are just so few cases of non-citizens voting that have been verified. And the focus on this, it's even kind of, separating the president from his own party. Like after the speech last week, you didn't see a lot of Republicans kind of jumping on board and, calling for extra hearings or anything like this on the supposed security issues that were uncovered or released in the unredacted documents, or the redacted documents that were released. I mean, this does seem to be like a focus of the administration that many members of Congress and members of the president's party wish he wasn't quite as zeroed in on ahead of these midterms. Like it feels like they would rather be talking about the housing bill that they just signed or the ways that they're trying to improve the economy, things like that. But
Totally.
no sign currently that he's going to be dissuaded from this. Anything else you want to add on this, Sarah?
No. I mean, I was just going to say, the thing that surprised me the most about this was actually seeing the Republican Party kind of turn the other way when Trump was talking about this. I'm sure you saw coverage on this as well, just that Republicans seem to be getting a little bit tired of hearing about this. There's a great Lisa Murkowski of Alaska just photo of her in like a puffy jacket and just kind of being like, I don't think this is happening. And I was like, just an interesting interesting note on all of this, I think.
She has said she's not going to be getting on board with the SAVE Act. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, on the subject of politics in Washington state, we're going to move on to our second story on Front Page.
The Latino community is not loyal to the Democrats. They're not loyal to the Republicans. They're looking for who is going to speak to the issues that they are feeling. And I think this year we have a great opportunity as Democrats to really dive into that.
All right, this story takes us to the Yakima area and the Latino community and its voting power in the Yakima area and the 14th legislative district House races that are going on this election cycle, and some hopes that Democrats at least have for picking up some gains in that part of the state. Sarah Mizes Tan, you reported on these races and the history of this district and some redistricting that's been going on there. So I wanted to kind of get your take on the recent reporting that you've been doing. I mean, first off, could you maybe just explain to us what is the 14th district? Where are we talking about? And what happened there in terms of redistricting?
Yeah. I think the 14th legislative district has kind of been like a really fascinating place for me. I believe it is the most Latino district in the state, and it's out in central Washington. It's kind of the agricultural hub of the state. Most of the Latinos who live there are folks who have immigrated to the United States from Mexico to join the agricultural industry there. I just think it's an interesting place in Washington. It doesn't feel like the Puget Sound region at all, both in landscape and just general vibe.
Demographics and everything
exactly.
like that.
Everything feels very, very different. It does feel like you're in kind of a different state. So I was just excited to be able to kind of dig in there. And I do think there's been just some really interesting recent history around how the state is dealing with that very large Latino population when it comes to voting and their voting power. For a very long time, advocates will say that district was divided up. It divided the Latino community's vote into the 14th legislative district and the 15th legislative district. I don't want to get people confused with too many numbers, but essentially that vote they felt was being diluted. They actually brought forward a whole lot of research around this and eventually got the state's redistricting council to redraw the lines so that the Latino community was unified just in the 14th legislative district. It caused a lot of drama.
There was a court case over that. Like they had to go to court for that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There was a court case, just a lot of drama. And honestly, it's still ongoing. Like Republicans feel that the district had been gerrymandered to favor Democrats by doing this. And Republicans have been continuously talking about redrawing those lines, redrawing them back. And there was a whole case over the summer that maybe has gone to the United States Supreme Court. We'll see if they end up taking it up. But there's just a lot there in terms of the legality of the lines drawn. So it's just I think it depends who you talk to, but it is a fascinating place. And then, of course, as we heard Stephen Paolini tell me, the Latino community there is not a solid Democratic vote there. They are very diverse. And they're not a monolith. Like, they do vote Republican, and it is and historically has been a solid Republican voting district.
Yeah, tell me more about that. So right now, the 14th district includes 2 members of the state house that are both Republican. But Democrats are looking at this and saying, okay, after redistricting, after everything that's been going on with the Trump administration and immigration enforcement, et cetera, they think there might be a chance at a flip here, or at a couple of flips. I mean, what are they expecting, and what are they doing?
Yeah, I think they are definitely eyeing it closely, and you can feel that energy in the political organizing that's happening on the ground. But yeah, there are 2 incumbent Republicans running for 2 open House seats. But there are also 2 Democratic challengers there, one of whom ran 2 years ago and actually ran a pretty close race. Like right after the redistricting effort in 2024, there was a very close Senate race, the closest in 30 years that happened against a Republican incumbent.
Wow.
A young Democratic candidate lost that by just 1,000 votes. And then one of the House seats lost by about 3,000 votes. And so, when I've talked to the state Democratic Party about why they're watching the 14th, they said their research shows that, honestly, it isn't a Republican-minded district in their opinion. Like, they don't feel like people there are buying into Republican causes. They think it's mostly just an issue of voter turnout and the fact that voter turnout tends to be so low with this population. So
that might be optimistic thinking, though. I mean, that's the Democrats. What are the Republicans saying?
Totally, yes. And the Republicans say absolutely no chance. It's been a solid red district for decades. And there's also a congressional district race that's happening where they're expected to solidly go for the Republican candidate. And the state Republican Party says, if anything, voters are just going to ride that red wave, basically, that Republican wave through the ballot and just vote Republican. So we shall see.
And what's the bigger significance here? I mean, it's like a couple of House races in the middle of the state, and it matters a lot to people who were working on the redistricting fight there and the Democrats who want to see them flip. But what does it matter for overall balance of power potentially in Olympia?
Totally. Yeah. I think state Democrats are looking for that supermajority. And I don't think that they believe they're going to get it in this election cycle. But I have absolutely heard folks talking about the possibility of getting that supermajority in 2028. They have to pick up a handful of seats in both the House and the Senate in order to get the supermajority. And so these Yakima seats would be some numbers in terms of that count toward the supermajority, which could be really powerful.
But this cycle, it's a long shot for Democrats to get that. It would mean that they could more easily amend the state constitution, for example, if they were able to get that supermajority. It would be a big step towards, even more power for Democrats in Olympia. But again, a little bit of a long shot this time around. Anything else you want to add on that race?
No, I think it'll be interesting to see. Does voter turnout end up turning out for this? Are folks just going to vote Republican through their ballot? Will Trump's policies have an impact on the way Latinos vote there? And will that really make an impact? I think it'll be interesting to watch.
All right. Third story on Front Page is coming your way.
People are looking for some fun and some irreverence, and he's just adorable.
That is tattoo artist Laura Exley speaking with King 5 about all the Jimothy tattoos she has inked in the last week. That's right, a Ballard-based raccoon with what is probably a case of short spine syndrome, although I don't think there has been a veterinary analysis of that. The little guy has really captured the internet's heart and has apparently ended up on people's skin permanently already. Jimothy has become this huge megastar online. Artists are drawing portraits of Jimothy. He's getting breathless coverage in the New York Post. There's a city council member who's planning a proclamation in his name. So apparently, you've seen Jimothy, right, Sarah? This is not new to you.
Oh my gosh, yes. I am just excited to be here to be able to speak about him.
Yeah,
I'm honored.
Truly, it is Jimothy's world, and we are just posting about it. So Kiana Hall is a Seattle area resident who was near the Ballard Goodwill when she filmed Jimothy. And she actually gave him the name Jimothy in a video that was posted to Instagram recently. And then it just went completely insane, internationally viral. I mean, my question is, like, why do you think Jimothy has become such an obsession online, Sarah?
Oh my gosh. Well, I can definitely say from my perspective, like, I feel like I first encountered Jimothy via, I think Instagram, maybe, just like kind of looking through. And I thought the video was maybe AI initially. And then I was like, well, maybe it's a monkey. I'm not sure.
Oh,
This is
poor
somebody's
Jimothy.
monkey. And yeah, I just didn't think it would go anywhere. But honestly, like, I guess it's kind of, it's just such an odd video in some ways. I guess I understand why she would have taken a video of it. And, I think there is something healing about watching this raccoon really thrive. Like, I've been really touched to see the videos of him as a baby that have resurfaced, where he looks so cute, and it sounds like his siblings are helping him.
Yeah, but do we know he's thriving? I mean, we don't know that he's
I know.
thriving. Like,
we're putting
he might
a lot
be
of feelings
struggling.
on it. Yeah, we're putting a lot of.
Yeah, we're projecting a lot. There's a lot of anthropomorphizing of Jimothy. And I think it's because there's, we all have like holes in our hearts that need filling. The thing that I am so terrified of is that this fame is going to lead to doom for Jimothy. Like, people are going to do something crazy, like try to trap him or put out food that's bad for him or something like that. Like, I just have this sense of, is there something wrong with me, Sarah, that I can't just enjoy this? Like, I see this guy and I'm like, oh no, there, like, a sense of impending doom is overtaking me about what could happen to Jimothy because of all this fame.
I know. I feel like I'm worried that, like, something is going to come out that, like, actually it's very difficult for Jimothy to live like a fulfilled life or something like that because of his spine disorder. I don't know what the life expectancy is of a raccoon with a spinal disorder like this. Like, maybe
that would be such an NPR story, though, if we did that. If we were like, let's talk to him.
We're going to bring in a biologist to talk about this, who can tell us what exactly Jimothy really is going through.
Yeah, just the most downer possible. Brought to you by NPR. Just a couple notes before we go. Jimothy won the salmon race at the Mariners game on Sunday. He beat out Humpy, who, in my opinion, got way too arrogant after his win last year and needs to be taken down a peg. So good job, Jimothy. The Mariners did go on to win after that. A mural by Henry sold for over $6,500. The proceeds going to the Ballard Food Bank. There's the proclamation coming from Alexis Mercedes Rink on the city council. And at the Jimmy Eat World concert at WAMU Theater on Saturday, fans brought signs and wore shirts proclaiming that, in fact, Jimothy Eat World, Sarah. So,
oh my gosh. And I gotta say, just fantastic name. I do feel like part of all of this is that he has a really great name.
Oh, yeah. It's all Kiana Hall. Okay, Jimothy Eat World will take us out. Thank you, Sarah Mizes Tan. This has been a blast.
Thanks so much for having me.
That's it for Soundside's Front Page today. You're listening to Soundside right here on KUOW.
It just takes some time, little girl, in a little out the right. Everything will be just fine. Everything will be all right.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime right here online at KUOW.org, or of course on your favorite podcast app.